To preface this review, I must say that the oldest Planet of the Apes film that I ever watched was Tim Burton's 2001 remake, Planet of the Apes, and I didn't like it at all. I watched that decades ago, and so I basically retconned that out of my memory when it comes to Planet of the Apes. Otherwise, before the prequel trilogy, I knew basically nothing about this. But 2011 came around and Rise of the Planet of the Apes released, and I saw that in theaters, and I saw War in theaters, and I watched Rise, Dawn, and War. I own all of them in 4K as well. And Rise of the Planet of the Apes was an exceptional masterpiece for a character study for the birth of Caesar and what all he goes through. And then Dawn was the continuation and how the apes survive. And then, of course, War was the battle with the colonel and his army. Now, the prequel trilogy, Rise, Dawn, and War, hands down is my all-time favorite movie trilogy ever. I absolutely loved everything that the writers did for Caesar's character and storyline. Not even just Caesar, Maurice, even the colonel, the villains, the semi-villains, the semi-antagonists, the semi-protagonists, Koba. Everything in Rise, Dawn, and War made perfect sense. Honestly, the prequel trilogy overall together is a masterpiece. It's masterclass filmmaking. The slight problem I did have with the prequel trilogy was that in Rise, all of the humans, other than Will being a scientist, all of the humans were relatively written to be stupid. But in Dawn and War, the humans were actually very smart. And so they made up for the stupidity in the human characters in Rise with Dawn and War's excellent storytelling for the human characters. Now, after War for the Planet of the Apes, which released in 2017, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, which was set to release actually in 19 or 20, was pushed all the way back to this year, 2024. So we're talking 7 years after War for the Planet of the Apes, the end of Caesar's storyline. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes picks up. Its introduction is basically an epilogue of Caesar's story. And then it goes and spans many generations later, which the filmmakers of Kingdom already specified. They won't say exactly how much, but set around 300 years after Caesar. And Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes starts off with an impeccable introduction to Noah, his character, and his family, and how they've lived and adopted inside of Earth. The Earth ran by apes. And Noah is the main protagonist, and he comes from a family of bird handlers and bird lovers who basically train and raise their own ape kids to learn how to wield eagles as their own partners and to be able to use them to fly and whatnot. And pretty soon thereafter, you find out real quick and in a really brutal way that this actually isn't the civilization in most of the world. The real civilization comes from the kingdom ran by Proximus Caesar, who his main ulterior motive is basically capturing and kidnapping as many apes as possible in the world to have them help him break down a barrier for human resources that is still in a fallout shelter after the whole collapse of humanity. And I'm not going to lie, I'm not going to beat around the bush. This really pushes the PG-13 rating, not in a graphic way, but honestly, I don't think little kids will enjoy this movie because there's a lot of suffering in this film. And it's not just suffering in the story, like the filming of this film makes you suffer through the eyes of the characters. And there are many instances, where you're greeted by a character. You go through scene after scene, getting to know them, liking them, or disliking them. And then they suffer a cruel fate, and you feel fucking horrible for them. And that's a lot of this film. And that's not a negative. Honestly, it's very poetic. It makes perfect sense in a world ruled by apes. It makes perfect sense how brutal apes and monkeys and orangutans can be. You know, there are so many callbacks to the prequel trilogy, Rise, Dawn, and War. Literally, the storyline of this film, Kingdom, the storyline itself is a callback to Rise, Dawn, and War's Caesar. And I'm going to get a little spoiler-tastic here, so prepare yourself. But the main storyline is basically Caesar's ideology twisted around after so many generations that they started kind of adopting their own ideals and throwing them into Caesar's ideals of apes together strong. But humans can also work with apes and coexist. And all of that is completely thrown out because of Proximus Caesar, the new king. The new King Caesar, who, yes, his motive behind everything is apes together strong, but he uses it in such a sadistic, narcissistic way. He chants and screams apes together strong. He builds them up to being together and coexisting, just to start treating them like slaves to pull down the barrier. And if they're not pulling it down, they're getting whipped and lashed. It's basically, that alone is a callback to War for the Planet of the Apes and everything Caesar suffered through. And now it's ape doing it to ape. It's fucking harrowing, daunting, and cruel. And even the lashings aren't even the worst part of those scenes. Those scenes end when the ropes snap and start accidentally lacerating and slashing the apes that were pulling on them. This is a cruel film, through and through. This is also a very poetic and beautiful film. This is a film that shows you the life lived in a world ran by apes with humans being captured. And this film, honestly, like I said, I've never watched any of the original Planet of the Apes films, but Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, I went into this film before all the trailers released, okay? So before anything was shown off, I had really low hopes because I know Disney bought out 20th Century Fox a couple years ago, and 20th Century Fox owned the Planet of the Apes series. And I had low hopes, but I did still have high expectations because of my love for the prequel trilogy. But I knew Disney was going to fuck this movie to death like they do every other series that they have bought. Fortunately, this is the one movie series Disney did not fuck. 20th Century Studios maybe had complete total control of this series. That way Disney wasn't legally allowed to fuck with it. Because there's no ideology, there's no political anything in this film. This film, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, is literally that film based around that title. And this is a harrowing, daunting, beautiful masterpiece. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, I'm not really a huge fan of continuations of trilogies. I usually think 3 films tells a full story, but this 4th film, which is actually a reboot for a new trilogy that continues in the same vein of the storyline of Caesar, and this is a beautiful, beautiful beginning to this new trilogy. Now, there were a couple gripes I had in tiny bits of scenes, like some stupid moves, like say for example, in every trailer it shows Nova hiding in the fields and the apes hunting her down. She finds Noah on the horse and she gets up and stands there and then screams Noah. That way he'll charge out for her and she'll try and get to him before the apes get to her. But really, she could have just crawled. Even if Noah started walking the other way with the other horse, the other apes still wouldn't have known where exactly she was. Kind of a stupid part, but I look past it. That's the only part I didn't really like. And I look past it. It doesn't break it. It doesn't really break the character, because humans in Kingdom, while they have smart tendencies, they're treated as if they regressed in evolution, which makes sense because this is a planet ruled by apes. So the evolution is flipped backwards, and it does make sense. And the end of this film is also honestly very sad because, again, maybe a spoiler-tastic part, so prepare yourself. But the end of this film is the exact opposite of everything of Caesar's teachings, where humans and apes can coexist with one another if they have a mutual respect and understanding. At the very end of this film, it's explained thoroughly, especially from human characters, that it most likely will never be able to work that way. Even though Caesar himself, living with Will and his family, proved that it would work, but no other human has that much sympathy or emotion for dumb, stupid apes. They just want to slaughter them because they think that they'll take them over, which obviously happened, but there are some good souls that still think that that can happen, that they can all coexist. But this film is superbly, beautifully well written. It's honestly beautifully well directed by Wes Ball, who directed the Maze Runner films, which I don't have too bad of an opinion on them. I think I saw the first one, and it wasn't really anything I wanted to rewatch ever again, but it wasn't terrible. I honestly don't even really remember it, but I know Wes Ball directed this film, and it's beautiful. He shot this film so beautifully. So beautifully. Honestly, I saw this film in IMAX, and I was kind of skeptical because the aspect ratio was 2.35 widescreen, and that's not IMAX. So I thoroughly researched it, and I wondered, how are they going to film this for IMAX? So I'm watching it in IMAX, and don't get me wrong, this is not an IMAX film. You can still clearly see the widescreen bars. It's just super sized out, but this film still looks beautiful as if it was filmed for IMAX in IMAX. This film does look beautiful, but it's not IMAX. I don't even want to say save your money and watch it regularly, because this film is still beautiful to watch in IMAX, in the giant screen, the much bigger scope, because the direction and filming of this film, it literally shows you the world in breathtaking cinematography. And this film is excellent at doing those kind of things, really expanding and building on the world just from the visual cues. And then we get apes that talk or do sign language, and we get humans that start to talk and start to interact with said apes. And everything about this film absolutely makes perfect sense. Plus, the performances in this film, the motion capture for the apes, hands down, this movie has to be the first one, the first Apes movie to win Best VFX or Motion Capture Oscars, hands down. The main focus of this film, you'll be able to see in comparison to the human acting, the Apes motion capture is flawless. The Oscars for any kind of visual effects need to go to the mocapping of this film, hands down. This film doesn't need to win Oscars for Best Film of the Year or Best anything else, but the motion capturing and the visual effects are perfect. They're so emotionally well done, to the point where the human acting is kind of stale in comparison. Like the lady that plays Nova, or May, she doesn't really do too much. She has some cues of crying, but even then, she kind of still just has the bland, still face she portrays through the entire film since she gets introduced in it. She's not a terrible actress, but I believe this might be one of her first films she's been in, and she needs to really work on her acting. She's not terrible. She's just kind of average. There's nothing stuck out for her acting. I'd love to see her in more stuff in the future, but she's got to bring more to the table. But Proximus Caesar played by, I believe his name is Kevin Durand or whatever. He's one of the antagonists of like Walking Tall and all of that. And then Noah, I don't remember the name of who played or portrayed Noah. Just every motion capturing in Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is absolutely flawless, to the point where you feel like these apes are real living beings. Even the orangutan, who clearly was a copy-paste Maurice from the prequel trilogy, but I think his name was like Rocca. So beautifully well done. He was the guy that would explain who Caesar actually was, not this pretentious Proximus Caesar. The actual real Caesar that everybody that watches these films fucking loves. Overall, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is beautiful. It's a beautiful fucking film, and I'm so glad I can say that this is already the second film of 2024 I will give a 10 out of 10 for. This film is perfect. It is just on par with the prequel trilogy. Honestly, it's a little better because the antagonists of this film, the apes, they actually act superbly. They're so intelligently written that I was stopping myself and saying to myself, damn, these apes are logical as fuck. Even the protagonist apes, when they would try to do something to one-up the antagonist, they would one-up the one-up, and I'm just like, my mind is fucking blown that they actually thought this way in Hollywood, how to actually write intelligently. And I'm so glad that it's the same writers from the prequel trilogy. They know their shit. They know this universe. Keep them for the rest of this new trilogy. I need them. I need them to stay in the writing room for this new trilogy. They are on the ball. And Wes Ball should return as a director. He's great. If not, bring Matt Reeves back. Bring the guy that made Rise of the Planet of the Apes back to direct it. They've all done wonderful jobs. But overall, this film, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, on par with the prequel trilogy, super smart, 10 out of 10. It's a masterpiece. Thank you.